Welcome to Path Forward. It is Wednesday, July 29th, and I'm just going to cover the Fauci. Let's just say it's Kabuki theater. Let me ask you a question. When was the last time a congressional hearing actually ended up in an indictment anywhere? When was the last time anybody of consequence lied to Congress and went to prison for it? When was the last time a criminal referral from Congress led to anyone's arrest? In fact, you can make the inference that there hasn't been a time in the last 10 years where the FBI has actually taken a criminal referral from anyone in Congress and done anything with it. I'm going to go back as long as 30 years. And here we are sitting here again watching more Kabuki theater. And that's really all this is Kabuki theater. Fauci pleads the fifth. He's got a pardon. They're not going to do anything with him. So why hold the hearing? I'll tell you exactly why. They don't want any more public blowback regarding the NDAA or the Save America Act. It's not even the Save America Act. It's the NDAA. They don't want any more death threats coming across their desk. Evidently, the Secret Service has 10,000 credible death threats against sitting senators, congressmen, and the president because of Section 219. So you have to ask yourself the question, what is the best way to divert the public's attention? Which, by the way, this is the oldest script in the book. They have done this script over and over and over since the 1940s. This is nothing new. The only thing new here is the content of the congressional hearing. And why would you bring Fauci in anyway? You know, and then there was the theatrics of his lawyers sitting at the table, disrupting the entire Kabuki theater and being escorted out. You don't think all that was scripted? You don't think all of that was put on the table? Come on. These people are entertainers. They're all entertainers. And all of them smile in front of the camera, act like enemies in front of the camera, and then as soon as the camera's off, they're high-fiving each other and laughing at you. That's how these people operate. And by the way, have you heard anything about Lindsey Graham's funeral? It was supposedly happened last weekend. Have you heard anything about that? What happened to the spectacle that was the John McCain funeral? Remember that? National Cathedral, everybody who's everybody and anybody who's anybody was there. And then the notes were passed out and the sour looks and all the conjecture. What happened to that? Where'd that go? Why aren't they doing that? So you can make the inference that this is just Kabuki theater and nothing more. Nothing's going to happen to Fauci. As long as the pardons sit there, and have you seen Trump do anything to go after the pardons and nullify the pardons, even though they are, since they were signed with an auto pen? No. And I'll tell you why that is. Because Susie Wiles is in bed with Big Pharma, or should I say Big Harma. So you can't arrest Fauci, because the moment you arrest Fauci, the first thing you do is you open up the floodgates to all of the other malfeasance that took place during COVID. It wasn't just Fauci and remdesivir or denying ivermectin or putting in place protocols that killed people, incentivizing hospitals to use remdesivir, and then following that, incentivizing hospitals to use and push the jabs. No, if you did that, literally, if you did that, the first thing that would happen would be he would rat out everybody else. And I mean everybody else. And don't ask me what my camera's doing. It's doing its own thing today. He would rat out everybody. And then he would rat out Big Pharma. And that would lead to Bill Gates. You don't think for one nanosecond that there was a host of big pharma lawyers sitting in the audience taking copious notes about what was said and what wasn't said and who said it? Who funds CNN and MSDNC? Pfizer. Who funds most of the people sitting on that panel? Pfizer. Who funds most, if not all, of the advertising for drugs and everything else that's on TV right now? Pfizer. You don't think for 1 nanosecond that that entire proceeding was carefully curated so their name never came up? Notice how the focus was just on Fauci and Fauci's financial malfeasance, along with the incentivization of the people on his staff. There was no mention of any of his interactions with Big Pharma, with Bill Gates, the Gates Foundation, or anything else. It was just Anthony Fauci. Look over here. Don't look over here. Look over here. You see how the game's played? Everything is a carefully curated lie. And it's a carefully curated lie to get you wrapped up into the emotional state, the drama, the emotional state of it. It's all highly charged emotional rhetoric, highly charged emotional language, but none of it means shit. Now, jack shit means fuck all. Why? Because they're not going to do anything. Congress has the power to do fuck all. They can't do anything. Even if they could do anything, the only thing they create is bullshit. They don't create anything else. Those people aren't builders. They don't build anything. They don't create anything. They just build mountains of bullshit. And yet, look at how much attention has been focused across all of social media today because of this hearing. Not one mention of the NDAA. Where's that at? Not one mention of anything related to Lindsey Graham. How'd the guy really die? Did he die in his house? Was it a heart attack? Or was it a missile-induced heart attack? I mean, which one was it? Everything you're seeing right now is a lie. Everything. Right down to Trump saying, the straits are open. The straits are open. The straits are open. It's a bunch of nonsense. And it's designed, like every other influencing operation, it is designed to keep you in the emotional state. When they keep you hijacked, that's when your frontal lobe is hijacked. You're flooded. You can't really think straight, or you're angry and you can't really think straight. That's how they manipulate you. They manipulate you into the emotional state so that you constantly and actively are hijacked so you cannot pay attention to anything outside your peripherals. If you notice that when you get angry, your peripherals do this, right? It's like tunnel vision when you're flying an F-15 or an F-16. When you hit so many different, when you hit your right amount of G forces and you don't have enough force in your G suit, or what they call the H1 maneuver, that's where you tighten up your stomach and your legs, keep the blood in your head, you start to gray out. You can make that, you do that same thing when you're emotionally hijacked, right? Try having an argument with your wife or your spouse or your girlfriend, and you can look at it from the perspective that if you walk away from that argument before you get deep into it and you take a 20-minute break and you come back, it's amazing how much of the cortisol is out of your system. The whole proceeding today was designed to keep people in the emotional state, to keep you jacked up so you're not paying attention, so you lose the peripherals. And right now, I can tell you that the peripherals are far more important than anything you're seeing coming out of the administration, out of mainstream news, out of alternative media, or out of Congress. Notice how the FBI wasn't there. Why didn't they roll him up? Why wasn't DOJ there? Why didn't they have DOJ on the ground to say, under these statutes, he violated these laws and these are felonies? I mean, think about it. What more powerful testimony can you have for the American people than to sit an FBI agent or sit the director of the FBI down and say, how many different laws did Fauci violate based on all the information that Congress and the DNI have provided you about COVID? And then just leave it there and let them answer it. I guarantee you there's at least 4 felonies in there. racketeering, money laundering. I mean, lying to Congress. There's a bunch of different felonies in there, just in his personal notes. And then you read through his personal notes and you realize, man, this guy is evil. This guy knowingly conducted gain of function research, which is bio research. Weapons research, which is what really gain of function really means. Conducted gain of function research outside of the approved protocols. And more importantly, it was condoned by the White House, the Obama White House. Why not bring Obama in? Hey, Barry, Booby, why don't you tell me why it is that you condoned a biolab and bioresearch when it violated at least 4 Geneva Conventions or 4 articles in the Geneva Convention? What? Hey, Barry, why don't you tell me why it is that you went over to Russia and Ukraine, mainly Ukraine, and walked through all these biolabs that we didn't have, but we have, but we said we didn't have, but we really have, but nobody knows we have them, but now they know we have them. And we didn't admit to it first, but now we admitted to it. And we admitted to it only after we got outed because you knew about it, but didn't want to say it. Why don't you tell us about that? And instead they bring Fauci and it's 2 hours of, I plead the fifth, I plead the fifth. It's not a hearing. It's grandstanding. It's monologuing. And it's right out of, this is Trump's specialty, right? It's all kayfabe. Play the part all the way through the hearing and then go high five each other and go to another orgy and everybody, diddle each other. That's all it is. There's no outcome here that's going to benefit the American people. Pfizer's not going to be held accountable. Johnson & Johnson is not going to be held accountable. Moderna is not going to be held accountable. Bill Gates is not going to be held accountable. And Fauci's definitely not going to be held accountable. Daszak's not going to be held accountable. Who's going to hold him accountable? It's not going to be the FBI. I don't know what they do. I have no idea what the DOJ does other than grandstand and say it's not illegal to party with a pedophile, a human trafficker, a money launderer, a bioresearch funder, and somebody who works in the back end to make sure that all the illicit CIA activities are funded. No, they can't arrest that guy. So what do you think the odds are they're going to arrest Fauci? Fauci's a middle manager for somebody else, probably Gates and Big Pharma. The money had to come from somewhere. And there's no mention of that. There's no mention of where the money came from. You notice how they don't talk about warp speed. They don't talk about how warp speed came about and what his role in warp speed was. Ron Johnson, Mr. Remdesivir and vaccine injury, he only focuses on what Fauci did to facilitate people in the hospital, but he doesn't talk about the incentivization of all of the hospitals and doctors in the network to make sure that people that came in were placed on a ventilator and killed, which violates the Hippocratic Oath. I don't know. That's vaguely important. That they don't make mention of the fact, other than the emergency, declaring an emergency protocol and denying ivermectin, but he doesn't talk about the fact that they've incentivized hospitals to maximize the number of people that are in beds on ventilators and using remdesivir. They don't talk about the fact that they literally burned up people's entire careers and livelihoods because they wouldn't take the vaccine. They don't talk about any of that. No, I didn't hear anybody address the mask issue. It was a blatant fucking lie. You remember going to Trader Joe's or going to one of the, Whole Foods or, one of those virtue signaling yuppie, I have my small little dog and my latte, and I'm going to the store, virtue signaling shitholes that most people go into and spend way too much money on carrots. Those places. Remember that? Remember the 6'2" man bun standing outside with blue hair, making sure everybody wore their mask when they came in? Remember that? Gee, I wonder where all that came from. Came from Fauci, based on no science. It was in his notes. In fact, he jokes about it in his notes. He has so much contempt for the American public. There's so much contempt for anybody that's a conservative. It's amazing to listen to this, just to read through his cursory notes. You're like, you are a complete evil fucking Keebler elf. How did you possibly survive? And then you realize This game has been going on since he came into NIH way back in the 80s. And let's talk about Robert Redfield and Deborah Birx for a second, because those two shitbags have not been held to account either. Robert Birx and, Robert Redfield and Deborah Birx worked together at US SAMRID when they were in their Army days, when they were working on the Ebola vaccine. And he was basically brought up on charges and investigated because he lied about the efficacy of the Ebola vaccine that he was supposedly developing. I don't know how he got out of that or how he was exonerated of it, but that should tell you everything you need to know, that those two same shitbags that were working on it was the AIDS vaccine, working on the AIDS vaccine, are fast forward, and they're both at the CDC and they're at NIH at the same time COVID happens. You think that's a coincidence? Now Redfield is completely changed his tune about vaccines, where a year ago he was saying that they're dangerous, their efficacy is questionable. None of that was at this hearing. I would have bought, if it was me, I would have brought all of them in. Redfield, Fauci, Birx, and then I would have had the FBI escort them to Gitmo, or the military escort them to Gitmo right out of their chair. Like, thank you for your testimony. Now go see Sergeant Umpty Frats, and you're going to fuck off down to Gitmo, and you're going to wait trial for crimes against humanity. Did you see any of that today? Was there any of that coordination? Why didn't Rand Paul coordinate all of this with the FBI prior to having this fucking hearing? No, we have to have more Kabuki theater, because we don't have enough congressional hearings that lead to fucking nowhere and have fuck all to do about anything ever. It should make your blood boil. This is what your elected officials do all day. They stand in front of you and grandstand and lie to you. And nobody's held accountable. At the end of the day, that's the part of this that gets under my skin the most. The fact that we sit in front of these people who should be in prison for treason, every single one of them, including Rand Paul, and especially Trey Gowdy. And what's that fucking retard's name that rolls up his sleeves, never wears a jacket? What's his fucking name? The coach that wasn't the coach that was the coach during all of the athlete raping at Penn State or University of Pennsylvania. Which guy was that? What's his name again? I can't think of that douchebag's name. He's so memorable. I mean, unmemorable and unaccomplished. I can't remember his name. Jim Jordan. That's his name. Yeah, Jim Jordan. It's a disgusting display of Kabuki theater. And I'm just amazed. So I look at these things. I watch all of these theatrics, and I see how curated most of it is. And I see how scripted most of it is. And then I go across social media and I see all of the different narratives, the pro and the counter, right? So TMZ's, I can't think of his first name, his last name's Levin, did a video about this. Is just appalling. It's appalling to see that Fauci was grilled by the government when he just tried to do the best thing under COVID. Okay, that's an Epstein guy. Has pictures of him with Epstein. That's the counterpoint. Then you have all the people behind Ron or behind Rand Paul that are like, this was so long overdue. So the public just needs to know, look, let me help you. Help me help you. Public doesn't care. Most of the public doesn't watch congressional hearings because they're at work. And then the part of the public that does is over 70, and they're the ones that got us here in the first place. They're the ones that allowed all these liberal, stupid politicians to come into states, as well as Republicans, and ruin the states. And every single one of them sit at home and watch CNN and watch MSDNC or Fox News, and they believe everything they're told. But the younger generations, they really don't give a shit, because they know that nothing's going to change. And they have realized that everything that comes out of Washington, D.C. is a bold-faced lie. and that every politician is a piece of shit. So they don't pay attention to any of it because most of it, if not all of it, and 99.9999999% of it is bullshit. Wait, let me say it's bullshit. So they don't pay attention to it. And when you ask them about it, they're like, I don't care. I really don't care because nothing's going to change. None of these people are going to be held accountable. None of these people are going to go to jail. None of these people are going to do anything different. They walked away with the money and we'll never see it again. And that to me is probably the best answer I've heard all week. And the other answer I heard today, which I really appreciated, was, hey, I'm just trying to figure out how I can afford a house. Houses are $1 million. I make less than $100,000 a year. I don't know how I'm going to afford a $7,000 a month house payment. That's not real. And there's nothing in my price range that's affordable that I could even get into and fix up. And even if I could, it's in the hood. And I don't want to live in the hood. So I don't give a shit about what Congress is doing. I just want them all to go to prison. And I want to see affordable housing prices. And I want to see affordable food prices. And I want the orange powder to get the fuck out of office so that we can bring somebody in that actually knows what the hell they're doing. Okay, that's real. That's real. But that's what the under 30s think. And the under 25s, they're on Instagram, they're doing their day-to-day thing. They're going to school and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do when they grow up. They don't care. And the 30 to 40 somethings, they don't care because they're trying to make a living and they've realized that politics is a road to nowhere. So that leaves the 45 to 85 to care. And most of us that have been around the block and have seen everything that's come out of Congress in the last 50 years knows that nothing is going to happen. There's no chance that the DOJ or the FBI is ever going to do their job. And even if they did do their job, it will never be with Obama because they never hold anyone accountable and they've never held anyone to account. And Trump said it in his speech. If you didn't catch it, let me repeat it for you. The intelligence agencies vetted everything in this speech before I presented it to make sure it was factually correct. So the intelligence agencies are still getting to Trump 6 ways from Sunday, according to Chuck Schumer. What's changed? What I see is an exact repeat of Trump's first administration. A lot of good people come in the door. Within a year, they're out the door. By year 4, it's all shitbags. It's all swamp creatures. And there's no progress whatsoever. But most importantly, Trump doesn't have the balls to pull the fucking trigger on anything. Did he declare the Insurrection Act? No. And there's a litany of excuses why he didn't do it. Well, we didn't have the max density of 80% so that we avoided a civil war. Look, we're not going to avoid conflict. He's not Neville Chamberlain. You can't avoid conflict. Conflict is going to happen at this point. It's inevitable. And it's inevitable because we've crossed the point of no return. The government is so corrupt and so filled with swamp creatures that do not represent this country. And even to the state level, there is no amount of voting or prayer that's going to get us out of this without gunfire. That's how this goes. Michael Yon said it. I've said it. Even Matt Bracken said it. At some point, this will go kinetic. Whether it's this week, next week, doesn't matter. It's going to go kinetic. And when it does, it will happen fast. That's what this whole Kabuki theater says to me, is that they have no intention of changing anything in the status quo. And oh, by the way, I should remind everybody that the national debt is $41 trillion. And they're getting ready to vote another $1.5 trillion to defense, which is on top of the $1.8 that they give to the Department of Health, DHS. So, yeah, If you think for 1 nanosecond that any of this is going to lead to a conviction or some kind of arrest, you are smoking crack. This is going nowhere. And it's going to be 3 days of, let me tell you how this week's going to go. It's Wednesday. Let's backward plan. Let's backward plan from Friday. Right? Friday is, I think they go on recess either today or tomorrow. Right? So let's just say tomorrow's the day they go in recess. They're going to wait till 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock at night. They're going to vote in the NDAA, and then they're all going to leave. And you won't hear a word about it until like a day or 2 days later. Unless there's somebody on the floor that reports it out. Maybe it'll be Massey. Who knows? But all of this is just cover for that. I don't see it as anything else. It doesn't serve a purpose. It's not going to change the medical industry. It's not going to change any of the calculus related to warp speed. It's not going to change anybody at DARPA or in DOD or Department of War that forced and mandated any of the shots. It's not going to lead to the arrest, conviction, and sentencing of anybody in the medical industry, especially any of the medical boards. How many of the medical boards threw doctors out because they wanted to prescribe ivermectin? Did you hear any mention of that today? No, you just heard villainization of one guy. This is the guy. This is the guy. Nobody else, just this guy. This guy did it all. He did everything. That's the DC two-step. That's what they do all the time. And more importantly, the medical boards, look at Mary Taylor Bowden, right? She literally is still litigating with her medical system and the medical board in Texas because she was giving people care outside of the recommendations of the mandatory care that was prescribed by NIH. I want to see the medical boards and the American Medical Association designated as fucking terrorist organizations before this is over. And I want every single one of them. I don't care how old they are. I want every single one of them that was sitting in an office at a desk and pushing all of this during COVID held to account, meaning they spend the rest of their lives in prison for crimes against humanity, for destroying doctors' careers, for mandating health that was massively detrimental to the population and forcing the jabs. And that goes to the state, that goes to the governors, and that goes to any senator or any congressman that was pushing the jab. And finally, the same thing with the press. Anybody in the press that villainized somebody for not taking the jab, you go to prison. Full stop, you go to prison for sedition. And then you rot. You never get out, ever. But we'll never see that happen. We're never going to see any kind of accountability for any of this. Why? Because we live in a system that's controlled by oligarchs. For Miriam Adelson to boast on a show that she owned Lindsey Graham should tell you everything you need to know about our system of governance. There is no way that this is going to reform itself, and there's no way it's going to end peacefully. So you better brace yourselves for some rough days ahead. And when this is over, not only is there going to be limited choices, not only is there going to be a litany of things that change, you're going to see a culture that's going to be hard as nails because they will have lived through one of the roughest times in world history, even rougher than the Great Flood. Because not only are we going to have to deal with shortages and famine and sickness, but we're going to have to deal with the second and third and fourth order effects from the COVID vaccines and the spike protein that has been shed all over our population. And even people that don't and never got the vaccine, just by being in proximity to somebody with the spike protein, has that in their system. The people that put that into place, the people that created that vaccine, every single one of them needs to get and be held accountable for crimes against humanity. All of that has to be dealt with on the other side of this, if not during. So don't get wrapped. My point of all of this is don't get wrapped up in this Kabuki theater because it's not going to lead anywhere. They're not going to change anything. No one's going to go to jail, least of all Fauci. And if just like with Epstein, if he did go to jail, it would burn the whole system down, because the whole system is this big incestuous party of frickin' pedophiles, for lack of a better word. And look, I'm not trying to blackpill you. I'm just giving you the reality of the situation. I've had people blow up both my Substack this morning and blow up my phone, telling me, you need to watch this guy, you need to watch this guy, you need to watch this guy, you need to pay attention to this. No, I don't. I don't need to pay attention to them, because 99% of what we're seeing is a complete lie. Most of it's fiction and it's conjured BS. There's no investment there that's going to lead to any kind of truth. And I'm not sitting here saying that everything's going to be awesome, because I don't believe that. I'm calling it like I see it. And I wasn't even going to talk about Fauci today, because I don't give a fuck. I don't care about him. He'll be dealt with. There's a rope, there's a tree. When this is all said and done, that'll be dealt with. Probably dealt with before. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of surprised it hasn't been. How many vaccine injured people do you know that don't have any reason to live? They've been so injured by the vaccine. Their lives have been tossed upside down by the vaccine, that I'm surprised that somebody hasn't gone off the reservation already. But again, we haven't reached that point where the cost of breaking the law outweighs the cost of following the law. But we're rapidly approaching that culmination point. I can tell you that the thing to watch, the signal in all of this, is the NDAA, not the SAVE Act. SAVE Act doesn't matter. Even if they implement it, even if they signed it today, even if Trump signed it today, rushed over there after the vote and signed it, it still wouldn't take effect until after the elections. So it doesn't matter. And I don't think it's going to pass anyway, so it still doesn't matter. But the NDAA does matter. It matters because that's irreversible. Once we allow Israel into the Pentagon and give them seats and allow them to take over, the sky's the limit for what they can do in this country. And that, to me, is treason. It's treason just that this has been voted on in one house. But it'll be treason if it's signed into law. And from that moment on, if Trump does sign this into law, I don't want to hear one more thing about Trump's a superhero. To me, at that point, he's a traitor. If you would have watched the show yesterday on Coffee and a Mic with Jan and with Mike Adams, you would have seen Jan say, nope, we're well past that. Warp speed, death jabs, that was treason. And Trump was on duty for that. So I don't care what you say. He's already guilty of treason. You can't beat that logic, because Trump was on duty when warp speed was brought into effect. And I don't want to hear he was duped. I don't want to hear he was fed bad information. I don't want to hear any of that, because since then, he's had people like John Rich sit in front of him and say your base knows that these vaccines are poison, and they resent the fact that you bring this up in every one of your speeches. Stop talking about warp speed. Distance yourself from warp speed. And he didn't do it. He is still, even today, touting warp speed. So there you have it. And look, I would love to be surprised. I would love to be wrong and see the DOJ and the FBI actually arrest somebody like Obama, especially Brennan, Rice, Holder, Clapper, Hayden, all of them. But I don't have any faith in any of that, because I haven't seen any empirical evidence that they're going to do that. They've given no indication that they're going to do that. And look, there's grand juries going on in Florida right now, but those are about the election. Those are not about any of the malfeasance that was uncovered by the DNI. And look, maybe the election grand juries will lead to an indictment of Obama. But I have never seen in our history, in the last 60 years, I have never seen, even farther back, far back as 100 years. I've never seen a former president indicted for anything. So I don't hold out any hope because history doesn't show it, and the empirical evidence in front of me doesn't show that Obama would be held accountable. And that guy is the Manchurian candidate, and everyone knew it. So until that happens, I don't buy a word of this. And I'm sorry to be so frank about it today, but Fauci is not the fight. Fauci's a middle manager. He was probably doing things at the behest of somebody else with very deep pockets. He's not the fight. The fight is 219 and our sovereignty. That's the fight. The fight is with the compromise of the state governments by China and all the paid influencers that took money from China. And I think you're going to be surprised when you follow the money, who is on that list. You're going to see some conservatives on that list too. And don't be shocked when you see that list, because that list, I've been told that list is coming out. The paid influencers by China. I've been told that that's going to come out. And look, once that happens, guess what? You're going to be shocked. All those people you thought were icons, nope, they're all shitbags. Every single one of them. So don't be shocked by it. Just be ready for it. As far as preparedness goes, the thing that all of you should be doing right now. So I did a walkthrough of my gear yesterday. I went through the contingency bag. I don't like calling it a bug out bag. I've done 3 iterations of it now, and I'll get that up tonight. It's going to go 2 places. It's going to go on Substack. It's going to go on the Preparedness Substack, and it's going to go on the Path Forward. I'm going to do a version for everyone. I'm also going to post the government list for the bug out bag. Terrible term, by the way. And then I'll post a version for bug in. Basically, I need to get back to my safe area. And I don't call it back to your house. I call it a safe area. And Troop will say the same thing. And focus on, and again, this is geographically dependent, right? You're going to have different kit in each geographic region. Like what I have, some of the things I have in my kit in, Minnesota versus, or Wisconsin versus here. No, I wouldn't. But I would have probably cold weather gear, and I would have definitely have emergency shelters, a robust emergency shelter, and probably a casualty blanket instead of a survival blanket in my kit up there, because it gets fucking cold. In fact, it gets cold, and I don't know why people live there. Same with, Michigan and especially North Dakota. Why not? Why not? Because it's cold. So, but last but not least, I posted both the links for ham radios and supplements. Those are in the show notes. I have an affiliate now, which is Strong Coffee. I'm working on 2 others and get those up too. And these are products I actually use. So you can see that in the show notes. And if you use the code ONETEAM with Strong Coffee, it gives you 20% off, and it helps the channel. So check it out. I like they have a latte. It's an instant latte with collagen in it. And yeah, it's pretty good. Actually, I use it, and I don't use it every day, but at least twice a week. So yeah, take that for what it's worth. And once I get the other affiliates set up, you'll see those in the show notes too. We'll be back tomorrow night with the roundtable. I'm not sure who's going to be on this week. We have people, it's summertime, so everybody's waxing their cat until about 5:55 or 6:55 before we start the show. We're going to go earlier tomorrow, probably at 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific, just to give the guys on the East Coast a bit of a break. When you go 2 hours on the roundtable, it gets a little long in the tooth for those guys that have been doing shows all day. And Matt's tipped over with shows, so is Jan. But yeah. So look for that tomorrow night, and then I'll be back Friday to see where we are at the NDAA. But my advice for all of this: don't pay attention to the day-to-day and the tactical stuff out of DC. It's all noise. Look for the signal, which is the NDAA. Pay attention to that. I'll be back tomorrow night. Actually, I'll be back. Yeah, I'll be back tomorrow afternoon. God bless. One team, one fight.